Well, Dave Pellowe is no stranger to ADH TV viewers. He is the convener of the Church and State Conferences and a Christian cultural and political commentator. Last week, a case that was brought against him in the Queensland Human Rights Commission was sensationally dropped, or at least the clock ran out on the complaint, which is the same as it essentially being dropped. He was being sued for failing to perform a welcome to country at a Christian event. Dave Pellowe joins me now from Queensland. Dave, I'm sure you're relieved to be free of this legal encumbrance, but you should never have been in front of the Queensland Human Rights Commission in the first place, should you?
Absolutely correct, Lyle. The complaint was there was offence taken by me not doing a welcome to country, or by doing an acknowledgement that the earth is the Lord's instead of an acknowledgement of country, country being a pagan concept of a spiritual entity. And I therefore answered the question why I wasn't afraid about offending people by saying, well, Aboriginal religion is incompatible with Christianity. And I went into great lengths and gave a fairly strong teaching on it. But you're right that this shouldn't have come before the Queensland Human Rights Commission. Because the Queensland Human Rights Commission shouldn't exist. It is a perverse institution which has been hijacked by leftist extremists and people who've been groomed to take offence where none was intended or given, in a fair exchange of basic ideas. I never once spoke about some person or group of people, but only about the incompatibility of a set of ideas and mutually exclusive truth claims. But this process has been used where there was no substance, no facts, no evidence, and the gentleman asked for an extension and then ran that clock out as well, without the ability to ever, or a likely prospect of ever securing a prosecution. So the QHRC certainly shouldn't have accepted this complaint if the QHRC even needs to exist.
I agree with you. I don't think these human rights commissions should exist. I don't think they do anything to further human rights. And I think a lot of people don't understand that the legislation which underpins them can allow people like you to be compelled into a legal process. And I think that's probably a wake-up call for many people, because they're not aware that this power exists. But as we were saying earlier, the complaint has essentially been dropped, but you've still been punished as a result of the legal obligations that go with someone being allowed to bring such a complaint in the first place.
Look, at the mandatory conciliation that I was forced to attend, my legal team, the magnificent lawyers from the Human Rights Law Alliance, gave some advice to the complainant for free and said, please get good legal advice, because any good lawyer is going to tell you you don't have a leg to stand on, there's zero prospects for success, and nobody's time should be wasted with this matter. That wasn't passive-aggressive, it was very sincere. And he asked for an extension to the clock so he could get legal advice. So we were pleased he was getting that. But we never heard from him again. And so I'm not saying I know for certain he did this, but he could have got legal advice early on that said this has no prospects, and then simply not communicated any further, letting the deadlines elapse, but prolonging the distress and the involvement of lawyers and anxiety for family, etc., as the best punishment available to him against people who merely disagreed with his theological and political ideas. And the government should never be an arbiter of political or theological debates.
No, absolutely not. So this is you've been able to turn this into some good. You were able to organise a fundraiser for the HRLA, magnificent law firm. They don't charge people like you or I anything. People know that I've been involved in a 4-year litigation as well with a couple of drag queens that have sued me. You raised well over $100,000 for the Human Rights Law Alliance. So that's been a silver lining to this whole case.
Yeah, look, this was always something the lawyers said would be easily defended and not really go anywhere. And John Steenhoff and the rest of the team at the Human Rights Law Alliance do magnificent work, and yours is one of the cases that is being going a long way and costing a lot of money. Now, I knew that I wouldn't have enough money to defend this myself, but the money it would take to defend would be insignificant still compared to a case like yours or Jereth Cox or so many others. And so I did determine to take what the devil intended for bad and use it for God's glory and for the good. And so we did a fundraiser to raise a shield against the sword of government, which bad faith actors can use against innocent people like yourself and others without media contacts or political savvy. And it is an intimidating place to find themselves in. And so my case probably cost about $10,000 to defend, which is frightening in the cost that a very easy case still imposes. And yet we raised about $170,000 so far. The fundraiser is still continuing. If people want to continue to donate to the defence of your case and so many others which are ongoing, I'd encourage them to go to the website for those donations, where you'll also be able to see more about this case and a 4.5-hour free speech marathon commentary from people across the nation. The website for that is defendingdemocracy.au, defendingdemocracy.au.
Well, Dave, I think the stand you've taken has been a good one because it's garnered a lot of media attention. You've been on Ben Fordham on 2GB and Sky News several times and probably other places. But I think it's given people a greater permission structure and a bit more courage to push back against welcome to countries and acknowledgement of countries and all this sort of stuff. Not out of any disrespect for Indigenous people, but just simply out of the freedom to say that, well, we all belong to this nation, whether we're Indigenous or not. And I feel like some of the pall of political correctness has been broken as a result of the stance you've taken.
Yeah, look, tolerance and love, unconditional, is for people, not for ideas. And when I was asked about ideas, I answered about ideas. And I've got no respect for Aboriginal religion, while I have deep respect for my fellow humans from any ethnic or cultural background. But it's not true that all cultures are equal. While we're all equal in value to God, that is not egalitarianism doesn't work in the debate of truth claims. And Aboriginal religion and Christianity have mutually exclusive truth claims. And the continued imposition of religious observances by subjecting people strapped into plane seats, for example, to these pagan rituals is un-Australian. And there needs to be a permission structure for people to object and to politely excuse themselves from participating in those rituals.
I think you've helped move that discussion along. What could really help move this whole human rights issue along is if the new LNP government in Queensland had some courage to amend these flawed laws and if they even had a bit more courage to even abolish the human rights law. The Queensland Human Rights Commission itself, but I'm not holding my breath. Dave Pellowe, really appreciate your time and the stand that you've taken. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Lyle.